everyone, how's it going? Thank you so much for joining in today for day 5 of Global Hack Week INIT. I'm Aditya, one of the coaches here from India, and I'm really happy to be here with you all today. So, today's session is one that I've been looking forward to for a while because it is around, working with a piece of tech that I personally really love, and that's APIs. I love working with APIs. I love building APIs. Um, I've been a backend developer for a very long time, so APIs have been a big part of my tech journey. So I'm really happy to be able to share a bit about those with you. And that way, I think we've already got folks here in the chat who tuning in. Hi, Kana. Good to have you here again. We had a fun time yesterday at Chrome Dino. I know. So yeah, thanks for joining in. Hi Sid, how are you doing? It's been so long since we've caught up, and I have no idea when we're meeting again. But I'm really excited to see you whenever I do. Yes, absolutely. APIs role, they're amazing. Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for joining in. Hi Shivangi. Great. It's good to see folks here active in the chat, just chatting over with us. While we have you all here, just a few quick points. Please make sure to check in for this event. You want to get those points for your guild, right? So I'm sending it the link in the chat once again. You can check in from there. Make sure to do that as soon as possible. And if you haven't yet checked in for day 5 of Global Hack Week, please make sure to do that as well. All right. I can go ahead and throw in the link for that as well. If you can give me a second. Yep. Here we have it. So if you aren't yet checked in for day 5 of Global Hack Week INIT, make sure to do that as well. Now, with today's session, what we're going to do is, since the idea is to talk about connecting two APIs together, I'm going to showcase how we can consume uh, APIs and show how you can chain two of them together, and then we'll take that to a Cloud Functions environment and see how you can deploy those wherever you'd like. And in order to run the Cloud Functions environment, I'm going to use a technology offered by one of the sponsors, a tech that I've been actively working with for a while, and that's App Right. So I think it's going to be a good session. We're going to have a fun time for sure, and I hope you're all just as excited as I am about this. Awesome. So first things first, let's talk a little about APIs. What are APIs? Is there anyone here in the chat who's worked with APIs in the past and would like to share what API stands for or what they're here to do? What is the purpose of APIs? Anyone? I'll keep an eye out here in the chat, just while people share, if anyone wants to add any insights, they can do that. And I'll give it a few seconds and then I'll come up with a response of my own. Right, so we've got a few folks here. Kana has it right. It is an application programming interface. So does KiteCat here have. So yes, APIs stand for application programming interface. What they essentially do is APIs are a kind of software that act as a bridge between two applications. They allow two applications here. Maybe we've got one that is a client and another one, or that we want to communicate with, and they act as a bridge, letting us communicate with each other uh, using requests and responses. All right. Examples of APIs could include different. Well, I think we're aware of some karate APIs. software that lets us communicate with databases, for example. That's a place where we often tend to see APIs come into place. If you've used any cloud provider like Azure or AWS, they probably have some APIs. Like I know one thing that I've used a lot in the past, Azure Cognitive Services, that lets you perform ML services through APIs. So, and even aside from that, for example, if you're working with a mobile app and you want to work on the underlying system, right, with Android has its own set of APIs. So, one thing about APIs is that APIs can be found, can be deployed on the web, but that is not a mandate. We do tend to see web APIs very commonly, but it doesn't mean that APIs are only restricted to the web. We can have those running on our underlying system as well, right? Communicate with a service. That's kind of a way to understand what it does. That's one side of it, of course. Um, so of course, because it acts as a bridge, it does allow you to communicate. But there can be more, of course, right, behind this communication. It could include some more business logic or data, so there can be some more processing at the back. So of course, communication is an important aspect of it, but it can definitely expand further on that. That being said, um, there are quite a few major platforms that you can go ahead and build APIs with. I have extensively worked and built APIs with .NET. You can do so with with any server-side language, essentially, at least for a start. When it comes to building web APIs, that's a great place where you can kind of start off. So if you're into building web APIs, you can use .NET or Java. We've got Node.js. We've got Python with Flask and Django. They're there. Of course, there's Ruby and Golang and so many server-side languages you can work with. You can do this stuff with C++ as well if you'd like. So honestly, it's a very exciting space, and I think here with this session, of course, we're going to learn a little about consuming APIs, right? Combining two APIs together, stringing them together. So let's see how we can do that. I see a question, why do I like .NET so much? Honestly, because it's a great platform. C# is a wonderful language. It's something I'm comfortable with, and I really like the developer experience of .NET. So yeah. Plus, it's very diversified. You can build APIs, web apps, mobile apps, native apps for Windows, and you can do ML stuff. You can do game dev. It's a very powerful platform. So that's a big reason why I am a .NET fan. But yeah, so since we've talked about combining APIs, I'm going to show how we can consume APIs, how you can work with APIs that are available, consume them in your applications. All right. So for that, at the start, I will use a console application with .NET, and then we'll take that over to App Right and see how that could be done. All right. So what I was thinking was when I was planning about this session and thinking and seeing what sort of APIs we can combine together, what we can string together. And the idea that I came up with is we could start off by, maybe getting a random word for the day, right? We've got a few random word APIs. We could use one of those, get a random word, and, use that, take that over to a dictionary API, find its meaning, and then send that to a person as their random word of the day to help them increase their vocabulary, right? So that's the application that I've been thinking of. Just a little simple application that we can build out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started with that. First up, of course, we'll figure out what APIs we want to use here. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I've got my entire screen coming up. All right, it should be visible for us now. So first things first, as I mentioned, I was thinking of working with the random word API. So let's first look up these APIs that we have. Okay. If I search random word API, I think there's one that comes up very easily off the top. and that of course is this random work API that is available for free. Here, with this API, you can get one word stored randomly. So that's the option we're going to be working with. Aside from that, of course, it also lets you, uh, you know, get back information around, what languages are stored, and you can actually get a list of all the words available as well. So could be an interesting, it's an easy to use API, and we can definitely work with this, right? And so when we work with APIs, at least on the web, we've got a few different ways to communicate with it, right? I mentioned requests and responses earlier. So when we try to use this API, we essentially send it a request across using the HTTP protocol. So when we send these HTTP requests, there are a few different kinds of requests we can send as well. The most common ones that we come across are get, post, put, and delete, which are often used if you've ever worked with a CRUD API, a create, update, delete API that you can end up using with databases as well. That's kind of an easy way to understand how they correspond. So get requests are typically used when you want to get back some information. Post requests are used when you need to send in some information for processing before you get a response. Not that you can't do that with a get request as well, but with larger, more complex data, post requests are preferred. Put is used when you want to update information, and delete when you want to delete something. Um, so typically, when we see an API where we just want to get this one word back, right? What we do is we tend to use, uh, well, a get request. So we're going to use a get request here, and we can directly use it in the browser if we want. Let me just go back, copy this once again. Yeah. We can use this directly in our browser, and it'll actually send us that response back. Or if you want to go ahead and you want to you know you use that with whether it's uh, well, we can use some parameters there as well if we'd like we can set the number, we can set the length of the word as well, or the language. They've got a few different languages, so we can send these parameters in. So suppose we want to add a specific number of these words that we want, like we want maybe 2 words, we can get back 2 words. If we want 10 words, we can get back 10 words. There is an option like this, right? And then of course, if we want to add another parameter, like maybe length, for example, we can just add these parameters on top of that as well, right? Which, like, suppose I want 10 words, but I want all of them to be of the length 3. So I can send that in. If I want that to be 5. So all of these, with the get request, typically you'll see these sort of parameters on each endpoint, and then this allows you to send in extra information here. And you might have probably noticed this in your in different web apps as well, right? As you're using them, any website, you might see such parameters come in. So that is why these allow us to send information through whenever we're using get requests. And any link you send in the browser, these are typically get requests and not another format, because we're getting back information from these websites, right? But then if if you've got a form in that website and you want to send information forward, that probably will end up using a post request conventionally. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to build a little app. We'll build out our console app to consume this API here. So for that, let me hover over to my desktop. I've got my little init folder here, which has any applications I'm creating throughout init. So I am going to go ahead and create a .NET console application. So, and just as a disclaimer, you can use any platform you want throughout this process. There is no mandate. I just want you to be comfortable with your language, whatever you prefer. You can use whatever language you want. There is no mandate here. It's just that I'm comfortable with .NET, so I'm preferring .NET. But yeah, so I'm gonna call this, well, we'll just call this random word of the day, since that's what the application is all about. So that's what we'll do. And then I'm gonna open this in VS Code for myself. There we have VS Code. I'm gonna close that off. So when I created this little project here, it created a Hello World .NET 6 console application for me by default. And that I can see here, right? We can see with this program. So let me go ahead and try and run it, see if it even works. And if I go ahead and enter .NET run, it should get it up and running for me, which as seen here is apparent. I can also go ahead to the run and debug tab. It already has the launcher set. I can look for variables, the call stack, all of that. So I can get back information on the debug console as well. Looks like it all works. We're good to go here. So let me go ahead now. I'll put up the terminal in the meantime and we'll start. So what I want here is, well, I do want to create a class. For myself, I want a more conventional class function structure that might make it a little easier to understand in the meantime. Plus, when I transition over to App Right to create a cloud function, having a function available, it'll make it easier for me to show exactly what's happening, right? But with .NET 6, it's not mandatory to have a class function structure for your main class. They did update that. So I'm going to call this class random word of the day, and we'll have our main function there. This might seem familiar to a lot of Java developers here, if there are any, and with good reason. They are very syntactically similar, which is why I found it a lot easier to transition to C sharp. I was learning Core Java earlier, and that's kind of how I came across this, right? So I'm just gonna go ahead and do one thing, and I'm gonna create a, a variable called random word URL just to store this, um, you know, the link for this API that we have here. All right. And what I'll do next is I'm gonna create something called an HTTP client. And what we're gonna use this for is to send HTTP requests to, um, you know, this API that we have here. So suppose I want to send a response. I want to hit this URL that we have here. Right. What I would do is I would then actually I won't name this as a response for now. I'll just go ahead and I'll say random word response. And what we need to do is we want to, of course, consume this API, right? So the HTTP client has a few different functions, and that would let us hit this URL, of course. Now, one thing that is visible is that this is an asynchronous function that we're hitting, but the function over or outside, we'll need to await this to get back information. But that's not possible at the moment because this main function has been created as a normal, a normal synchronous function, right? So what we do then is we make the method async, and by this way, it's easier to, consume asynchronous functions there. Of course, I will suggest that if that's a concept you're not totally aware of, it might help to get a little reading done in. All right. But basically, when we talk about asynchronous functions, what this means is that just 1 second. So with asynchronous functions, what we're essentially doing, it can deliver a result in an async manner, right? With synchronous programming, what happens is that you're typically you've got each task checking off one at a time in a very specific sequence. But with asynchronous, you can do more at the same time. So what that you know what that lets you do essentially is that it avoids chaining of these functions in a synchronous manner. That's essentially what it does. I'll send you some maybe a link or so on maybe some reading you can do for around asynchronous programming. Let me go ahead and do that. Yeah, but basically, because with asynchronous programming, it isn't it prevents your application from blocking off um, you know further execution. If suppose this function is still being used, right, it won't totally pause your application from running, which goes not leveraging asynchronous programming where necessary could actually end up causing your applications to crash. So I'm sending in a link around this that you can maybe read more from. It's definitely a good resource. I used it a little while back, and another benefit of .NET here is that it is built keeping in mind async programming. So it definitely makes life easier on a few fronts. So let me go ahead, bring my screen back here for us, so that we can consume the API and see what response we get. So I am gonna get back a little response from here, right? Now this response, of course, is gonna be it'll be we want this to be readable as maybe a string, for example. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this response we get into a JSON. And the way I do that is I am going to take the response we got and read that as a string. And we're going to add a little weight here again. All right. And then for now, just to see whether this works, we can go ahead and print out this string in the console. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this function, see what comes up. All right. And it looks like we've got a valid response. We've got a word here, right? Which is great. Now, of course, keeping, looking at this word, we want to be able to, get this out of the string, be able to use it in the function that we have, because we want to be able to send this over to a dictionary later, right? So I'm going to go ahead now and deserialize this function so that, we can get this word out of this string that we have here. And for that, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and add this little piece of, I'll use a library that .NET allows that's called NewtonSoft.json, which actually makes it pretty easy to work with JSON objects. Now I see that it's not been installed, so let me go ahead and add this package to our .NET console app that we have. For that, I'm going to use a terminal command called .NET add package, which basically uses the NuGet package library. NuGet is the C# equivalent of npm here, or a pip. So I'm going to use NewtonSoft. I'll use NuGet here, and I'll use the .NET command available for that to add this this package here for us to use. And it looks like it's already done that pretty fast. Now, a good way to check is to check our CS proj, which is the equivalent of a package.json, and see whether it got included here. Looks like we have a reference. The moment you can see this reference, it means that our package has been received, and it's ready to use within this application here. So I'm gonna go ahead, go on top of the class, and add a using directive. And what this will let me do is it'll let me leverage this package that we have here. So now that I added that, you can see that there isn't a red line under JSON convert anymore. Until that moment, we had one, because that indicates that this isn't a class that's available for us. But with that directive, we can use it here, and we can use all the functions within it. So I'm going to use the one here to deserialize this object. Now, if you notice carefully, you would have seen that the response we're getting is in the form of a list. So I'm going to go ahead and set the type we wanted to deserialize it as, which in this case is a string, is well a list. You can also see that there seems to be some trouble here. But for now, I'll just tell you what, we can actually keep it as I'll just figure this out as we go forward, because we should be able to get, and should be able to deserialize. So I'm just gonna figure this out as we go forward. Sorted it out. Let me see if I can. Okay, that's sorted. So if suppose I go ahead now and replace this here, and I add random word list 0, because since it's the only word, it's going to be the first one available, right? 0 will let us get the first word out of this list here. So let me go ahead and run this application, see if we get back a list here. And looks like we do. We can see the word claim came, right? So if suppose I have to set these breakpoints here, see what sort of response we're getting. And I'll tell you what, let me add a number of words we're getting back, so that we can see what exactly happens. I'm going to add a few breakpoints so that we can run and watch this as it goes forward. So you can see that we stopped at this particular aspect here, which which let us basically read this function that we've gotten. If I cross this one, let me show you what happens. Right now we've got an empty list because it hasn't yet been deserialized. But if we look at the response string, we can see we've got a few words here in this, right? And if I go one step forward, you can see that now the list has been populated with the 3 words that we got. So the first one here that we have should be printed as this function completes. And there we have it. We have the first word we had in the list, and it's been printed. So the good thing here is that this function works. All right. Now what we want to do is we want to save. I'm going to save this as my random word. All right. And the reason is I now want to go ahead and use a dictionary API. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as my random word. I hope so far we're all comfortable with this. If I'll hop back to StreamYard for a second, see if we've got any questions coming into place. And anyone, any questions so far? Thank you. Thanks, Deep. All right, even if not, that's totally all right. There's no mandate, so we can, of course, go ahead and you know take this random word and now find a dictionary API for us to use. In the meantime, I think I saw Kana mention that they want to use .NET. If there's anyone else who wants to do so as well, I'll just send you a website here. This should let you, install .NET for you. So if you want to build with .NET, it's the best place to get started. All right. And this will take you to the SDKs as well. It'll let you download the SDK. Make sure you download the .NET 6 SDK, not another one. And if you want to go ahead and learn more about .NET, then sure, this should be. I'm sending another link. All right. So this should let you work with, learn about .NET. As far as .NET on Replit goes, I believe they have support for C Sharp, although I haven't used it if I'm honest personally. But like it's just something I haven't yet tried. But I do believe there is C Sharp support, so you should be able to work with C Sharp and .NET on Replit. It seems like there is support. I was just looking, and I think there is support for C Sharp. I'm just not sure which version of .NET though. So that's something to be looked into. Now I'm gonna go ahead. We're gonna look for a dictionary API here because, of course, why not, right? We want to get back the meaning of this word as well. So there is a free dictionary API that we have here. We can definitely try using this one. See how it works out. If we can get meanings here for this as well. So like just that last word we got, I'll try sending that in, and it looks like we are getting a meaning here, which is great. It's using Wiktionary here for that, so pretty good. Now earlier we saw that we deserialized, of course, to to this to a list, but sometimes we've got an entire object model available with us, right, that we might want to work with. So let's see how we can use a custom model to deserialize to as well once we use. I was looking at this API. It seems like we're using a get request here again, which is all right, convenient. So we can go ahead and we can use this for our purpose here for sure. Let me go ahead now and we're using this JSON, right? We're converting to a model, and of course, to make my life convenient, I'm going to use a little online tool called JSON to C Sharp, which will create a model for me. It's pretty handy and convenient, if I'm honest. So I'm just going to paste this JSON here. I'll set Pascal case using fields, and I'll just convert. So this conveniently converts the entire little list for me here. Now I do see it's added object for some of these, which should be string. Let me go ahead and make that update. But bottom line, this is actually going to very easily convert this JSON into, into this model here that we have with us. So it's very convenient that way. And I'm going to call this dictionary. I hope my spelling wasn't incorrect. But let me go ahead, copy this entire little thing here that we have. And I am going to create a new class here called, first I'll tell you what, I'll create a folder. Models. And within that, I will add a class dictionary.cs. Now, ideally, you can separate all of these as well if you'd like. All of these classes could be their own individual classes. For convenience, I'll just let it be for now. Huh. So it seems like, we've got a little thing here. Let me fix this up. Yeah. All right. So for now, this should be good for us. We shouldn't have any trouble here for sure. But let me just, I'm gonna save this and we'll try using the dictionary API we have now for this random word here. All right. So I'm gonna go back to our dictionary API website. We've got the API link here. It basically takes in that word we have. So I'm just gonna copy this. Go back to VS Code. I've now got, we'll say dictionary URL. And I'm going to add our random word here. So this should create the entire URL for us. Okay. Next up, we're gonna have our dictionary response. We're gonna take this dictionary response here. As earlier, I'm gonna use the HTTP client to send in a GET request. And we're gonna hit the dictionary URL this time, right? But of course, we want to get the response string, right? So, we're gonna leverage, our this response we've gotten, and we'll get the content out of that. And finally, we will deserialize it. I'll call this variable as dictionary result this time. We will use Newtonsoft, of course, deserialize this object. But this time, what we're going to do is we're going to use dictionary, and I realize we could have a little conflict here. So let me just change the name of this to dictionary API. The reason I've done this is dictionary API response. The reason I'm doing this is so that we don't end up with a clash with the conventional dictionary class. Otherwise, there are ways to kind of fix that up, but just this is going to be a little more convenient, if I'm honest. I'm going to take this dictionary API response and I will deserialize our response string into that. Okay. So ideally, if we looked at this structure that we had here, within the list we got, what should happen is that we should be able to get, well, actually, no, we have to get a list of this dictionary API model if I think about it. Let me just, because phonetics will be within the list, right? So it's going to be a list of the meaning. So I need to make a little change here now that I looked at that structure once again. So I'm going to just call this actually dictionary list. And here, as I say meaning, I want to call this variable as meaning. What this is going to be is, we'll take the dictionary list, take of course the first response within it, okay? Go ahead to meanings. Let me look at the structure once again. Within meanings, we've got definitions, all right? Within definitions, the first definition is what we want to look at. So That's what I will do. And here we should be able to get our definition. All right. So this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the word and I will add the meaning for that here. And if I hope this free API is able to find that. I mean, there are other APIs. We've got APIs for the Oxford Dictionary as well. There are APIs for Merriam-Webster as well, if I'm not wrong. But this is a start for us. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna run this now. All right. And hopefully this should work out well for us. I sincerely hope so. Because there is a chance that it doesn't find the word, and I really hope it does. Oh, nice. So we did get a result here. So I guess that's a good start for us. That way we're definitely, we've got a functioning API. We've stringed two APIs here. I want to add a third step to this though. Okay. And of course, this random word is nice, but what does it help if we're not able to get back a response here? Okay. So I'm going to add a third step to this, but, and that is, that let us text. But before that, I'm going to go ahead and set up App Right for us. Okay. So that we will directly do that when we're, or I'll tell you what, why not? Let's just get it up and running and we can test it out and see whether it works. So for this next little step that I have, I am going to use another piece of tech that I absolutely adore called Twilio, which lets us communicate with different, it offers different APIs that let you communicate with other people, whether through SMSs, voice calls, emails, or so on. So I am going to leverage their SMS API here. All right. So for that, again, one more thing we'll need here is a little helper class for us. Okay. No, I don't need it within models. So I'm gonna call this helper here. This is actually gonna go away once you know once we're working with app right, of course, because we're gonna use environment variables there. Right now, I just don't want to do that setup for now. So if you can give me a second, I'll just take my screen off and add this here because I kind of want to keep that information hidden for now. But if you can just give me a second, I'll get that sorted out. In the meantime, if you have any queries, you can throw those in. And Kana, I see you've put up a very nice question. And where are the Twilio coding gloves? They're not the Twilio Champion coding gloves, they're the Twilio coding gloves, but I actually have them here with me. So let me go ahead and show what those look like, because Twilio gave these all at the last Twilio Signal conference and before that at Relay. So these are coding gloves that Twilio has designed. Now that we're at Twilio, I think it's a good time to bring these out as well. So I'm just going to put these on and I'm going to show what these are. But thank you for that call out. It totally slipped my mind that I could bring these out here as well. You know. So these are Twilio's coding gloves. What they've got is they've got some padding here, which keeps your wrist rested, and they've got this little pocket here if you want to add a YubiKey. And what Twilio did is they made various versions of these for different languages and platforms, and they gave these to us based on our preference of language. So what I have are Twilio's .NET coding gloves. Similarly, there are ones for Python, JavaScript, basically any platform which Twilio has an SDK for. They made a version of these for. So yeah, these are pretty cool, pretty nice. I like them, if I'm honest. the only reason I don't use these regularly at my main setup is because I have a long wrist pad there, which essentially is what this was supposed to solve. But that being said, I think I can use these for now. Just make sure that all is all. All it's the we can keep these around for now, for sure. So I've got my Twilio helper up and ready. It's got my account SID, my auth token, and my phone number. I will show these on the Twilio platform as well, show you how you can get these. So if you can give me a second. All right, looks like I'm good to go with my helper for sure. All right, so let me go ahead, bring back my screen. Oh, that's pretty nice. That's cool. You can, I mean, gaming gloves and all that. That definitely pretty beneficial. I mean, these were initially designed specifically for coding. So they took inspiration from biking gloves, went forward from there to make sure that they had padding at the right moments. It's also sweat absorbent, so they try to keep that in mind. But definitely, I mean, whatever makes you feel more comfortable, that's a great way to go about these. So yes, bringing my screen back up. Okay, I'm gonna bring my screen back up now, and we'll hover over to Twilio's website. So as I was talking about Twilio has communication APIs for SMS, voice, video, and so on. And on top of that, they've now built out a full-fledged customer engagement platform that lets you get insights from any customer interactions and lets you personalize them for the future. So it's actually grown on to become a really handy platform for a lot of organizations. Within their products, you can find that they've got channels for messaging, voice, video. Twilio Live is there for actually building custom live streaming experiences as well. And then there's email through SendGrid. So they've got a lot of these channels you can leverage their APIs for. And then they've got dedicated applications you can use. Like Flex lets you build out your own contact center solution. Marketing campaigns through SendGrid lets you manage email marketing. Twilio Frontline is there to help your front desk services essentially to let your employees and customers connect. Then of course we've got security through Auth, Verify, Lookup. So if you've used 2FA in any application, two-factor authentication, you've probably come across Auth. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but yeah. And then we've got Segment, which is essentially used for managing a customer data pipeline. So they've got quite a few applications, quite a few channels, and we're going to use messaging specifically through SMS here to send this. So a third API is being chained here rather than just the two that was promised in the title. Now, if you don't have an account, you can go ahead and sign up as well. We do have a special link that will let you get about $50 worth of free credits. So let me go and share that with you. Oh yeah, I so agree. Twilio has some fantastic swag, if I'm honest. They can practically be an apparel company if they want. They've got really cool stuff. A lot of love for Twilio here, for sure. So yeah, coming back to my screen, and I think the .NET banner was still on. Let me go ahead and show you my screen now. Right, so I have an account already. I'm gonna go ahead and log in there. All right. If not, I've sent over a link that will let you sign up. Once you log in, what's gonna happen is you're gonna see if you're logging in for the first time, it'll ask you to create a project. You should see a portal for that. After that, we're gonna go ahead and purchase a number for ourselves. Okay. You'll see your account SID and auth token here, but I have a phone number here because I've already purchased one. You will need to purchase one if you're creating an account for the first time. So for that, now I have phone numbers pinned here. That may not be the case every time. In case you can't see, phone numbers here, just scroll down, go to Super Network. You can toggle this here as well and click on phone numbers. Okay. After this, you can go ahead, buy a number if you'd like. It's available here. You can see that option on the tab here as well. I currently own a US number. Um, you can purchase a US number directly. That should be all right. As far as Indian numbers go, being in India, I know the Twilio team is working on ensuring that support for Indian numbers comes in very soon as well. So, that might take a little bit of time, but in the meantime, you can purchase a US number for testing. That's totally all right. So you can go ahead, you can purchase that. As you see, there is a monthly fee, but the good thing is that is charged out of your credits. So you won't have to pay separately in the meantime. Okay. And you can go ahead and buy. My only recommendation is make sure you keep all the capabilities, because you never know what hack you're building and where you might need another capability. So even though we're using just SMS for now, if you're purchasing a number, just purchase one with all capabilities available. Okay. And a lot of these numbers have no address requirement, so that's a good thing. Feel free to do that, to use that. It'll let you make it'll allow international communication as well. That won't be an issue, since I have my number allows international communication, so I can definitely validate. It won't be an issue. So after that, the only thing you actually need is your account SID, your auth token, and your Twilio number. Now these were basically what I was setting up in the helper I was creating earlier. So if I go back to VS Code, this helper that I created here, that's all it is essentially. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to initialize that Twilio client now. I'll just comment this out. I'm going to say Twilio client dot init. And the reason nothing is coming up here is because, of course, this doesn't have the Twilio client, right? We're going to need to add that Twilio client to our application. So just as we added Newtonsoft earlier, I'm going to add the Twilio client here as well. The Twilio SDK for C# and .NET. So the command for that is just .NET add package Twilio. What this does is it'll install the Twilio SDK for us, which is very much visible here in our CS_proj file. Now, if I go back, actually just, I can find we've got Twilio here. By the way, if you want to look at these options, typically we have that, we've got this light bulb here, right? This shows us these options. You can also trigger it by pressing Control and dot. So I'm going to add a reference for Twilio here. And after that, I can see that, the init function is available. We need to add authentication details here. These authentication details, the username and password are basically our account SID and auth token. So since I added my helper there already, I'm going to add the account SID. And I'm going to, have our auth token. It's basically like, where we're just getting two variables. I've just saved the same information I had otherwise. And, now that this is ready, we can create a message. And then the type for this is message resource. The reason we don't see anything is because we need to use another reference for Twilio's REST API. All right. And since the Twilio SDK is installed, we can get this REST API using Directive directly. So after this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a little, message. So what it requires is a couple of things. It requires us to add a number that we're messaging to. For now, I will let this be my own phone number. Okay. We'll take this as, we'll change this up later on as we go forward, as we go to app right. We'll keep this stored in our environment, just like the other details. Okay. Next thing, we need a number from. Now, this here is essentially our Twilio number. Okay. And I've got that saved as well. So I'll just add this directly. And the third thing we need is a message body, right? What message are we actually sending? So for that, I'm actually just gonna copy this here. For now, we can change this message up. We can say, you know, random word of the day. And, should be good enough. And we can go ahead and we can, send this. Of course, we can send the message from here. Just to check, I'm gonna have a console right line, and I'm gonna send like just a serialized version of this JSON here. So I'm gonna serialize this object for a change. I'm gonna take the message, this object here, and I'm gonna add a little formatting, indent it so that it's just easy to see what we've done. And if all works out, this will send us the information from our Twilio SDK's message, and I can show the message on my phone. So let me go ahead, run this for us, and hopefully this will all work out. Ooh, looks like we're supposed to get a message anytime now. Let me check my. Oh, yes, we have gotten a message. If I come back and I just remove this from my screen, I can show that there is a message here that says random word of the day. And there's a word, evacuative, meaning that causes evacuation, cathartic, or purgative. So you can actually see this here. All right. Which is pretty cool, right? So now that these APIs work, let's take them over to App Right. Let's see what we can do here and how we can use them with App Right. Okay. So for that, let me go ahead and let me show how you can set up App Right for you. Okay. So first things first, we'll go to the App Right website. Let me put up this banner here. So as if you've looked at AppRite in the server already, AppRite is essentially an open source backend as a service solution that lets you build applications for web, mobile, Flutter, if you'd like. By mobile, I mean native mobile platforms like iOS or Android. And aside from that, we've got a variety of server-side SDKs as well that you can work with. With AppRite, you can self-deploy it wherever you want. The only thing you need is, Docker installed on your system. As long as that's there, you should be able to get it up and running. That being said, AppRite is working on a cloud beta, so that should be available sometime later this year, as per the current plan. And you can sign up for free cloud credits if you'd like. Okay. And the different offerings that AppRite currently has includes database, authentication, storage, functions. Functions we're going to be using right now, by the way. Then, of course, um, geolocalization. AppRite's got its own console. And yes, AppRite is built keeping in mind security and privacy. So it's definitely very handy to get started with. Now we've got we've got this little kickstart here, but let's get it up and running for us. Okay. So now If you want to get App Right set up for us, once Docker is available on your system, and you can find a link on where to install from the documentation as well, we can just copy and paste this command. I'm going to actually take the Unix command and not PowerShell, because I am going to be installing it within my within my Windows subsystem for Linux, within my WSL instance here. So I'm essentially running Ubuntu there, which is why that I'll be taking the Unix version of this. Unix is also the version you'd use if you're on a Mac, but if you're on Windows, you can use CMD or PowerShell. I would recommend PowerShell for sure. So you can go ahead and do that. Beyond that, if you want to look at the installation details, you can find our minimum recommended specs. AppWrite does require Docker Compose, so that is one thing you should keep in mind. If you're on Windows or Mac, installing a recent version of Docker Desktop will install Docker Compose by default. If you're on Linux, um, you can go ahead, find the link to install this as well. We've got it all in here, so you shouldn't have any problem. Okay, we've also got the Docker CLI instructions. So since I'm using the Unix version, I am gonna go ahead and copy this. I already have my Ubuntu version up and running, so I'm gonna clear this up. I'm gonna paste this command size, and I'm gonna run it. Now, since it's not like I don't have this image locally at the moment, it's gonna download the the Docker image for me as well. So it's gonna set it up. This actually gives us a little time to look and see if we have any questions as well. If anyone would like to ask. Even if not, it's totally okay. We've got the setup going for us, so we'll quickly get through this. But anyone has any questions? Whether about the APIs themselves, whether about Twilio or App Right, you can ask any of that. This can take a few seconds, a little bit of time depending on net speed. So I'm just hope we get through this quickly. Shouldn't take too much time if I'm honest. Most of these downloads are complete now. So yep, it's downloaded the image for us, and we're going to get it set up now. So as we set up, we'll have to select a few uh, details here. I will recommend following the defaults with ports especially. So just make sure you keep your HTTP and HTTPS port as 80 and 443. Okay, we'll leave this as default as well for now. Since I have got a local instance running here, I will leave my host name as localhost. If suppose you're deployed somewhere else and you want to keep maybe your personal domain connected, you can add that here. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna run this. It's as I've entered these details, it'll get App Right set up for us. So as soon as this is done, we can hover over to localhost, and we should find a running version of it. So it looks like App Right's installed successfully. Let me go ahead now, enter localhost, and you can see that I've got this sign up page here with me. Now, whenever you create an App Right instance for the first time, you do need to sign up. Okay, this will create an admin user for your instance. And once we do that, I'll go ahead, I'll sign up, and this will create a little account on my instance. Now I can go ahead, create a project. I will call this GHW init. Fun fact, I can also add a custom project ID if I'd like. I'll just keep MLH for now. So as soon as I do that, I get this nice little console here available for me, right? It's got all the different options. It's got this dashboard with analytics. Any client-side application I build, I can, add this platform here as well, which is always a good practice to do. Otherwise, it's gonna keep catching you on. Like, keeping in mind our security restrictions, this is actually gonna authorize your application to communicate with this App Right instance. So it's definitely gonna be necessary. Now, along with that, we've got our settings, which has our project ID, the name of this project. Um, you can enable and disable any services if you'd like. We've got custom domains if you want to connect. Now, since we aren't doing that right now, it's all right. And we've got members who you can invite over to this instance as well. So it's pretty handy this way. And we've got the different options like databases. You can go ahead, add a database. Under the database, you can add any collections you'd like. Now, here's one thing about collections. With collections, for example, this might seem a lot like your more conventional, like a NoSQL database, but actually we've got MariaDB running underneath, which is a relational database here, right? It's the equivalent of having MySQL there, and so your attributes equate to your to different columns essentially, and documents equate to rows. But that being said, with App Right, there will be support for external database adapters as well. I know Postgres and MongoDB has been in the works and is close to we're all pretty much ready there, almost ready there. So we can see, you'll probably be able to see some updates on this point coming in very soon. Then we've got storage buckets which let you host any static files you'd like images and documents. You can keep those up here. Users lets you have users for your application. One really cool thing about App Right is that it's got all of these inbuilt methods like email password authentication, magic URLs, anonymous login, JWT, and more recently phone authentication has been added as well. So you can have your phone number in there. You can set a limit for the number of users you'd like. And along with that, there are over 30 OAuth adapters here that you can actually use. So you just need the client ID, client secret, and if there's any other adapter which needs something more like custom domains and all, you can have all of that information here and set these up for your application as well. So it's pretty convenient to use that way. Of course, the big one that we want to work with is functions, cloud functions essentially. So we're going to do this. So now to add a cloud function here, all you need to do is just click on this button, and you can click on runtimes, but we see that it's only got 4 runtimes here, right? And there's no .NET available, which, so I mean, if we didn't have .NET, why even build with it in the first place, right? That's because App Right does actually support .NET as a runtime. It's not enabled by default. If we scroll down, we've actually got runtime. We've got runtimes available for 11 different languages. Keeping in mind Node, PHP, Python, Ruby, Dino, Dart, Swift, .NET, Kotlin, Java, and C++. And you can actually figure out all the different versions of these languages we support as well. Like Node has support for different versions here. We've got multiple supported versions for Python, Dino, PHP, Ruby, all of these. .NET actually supports both .NET 6 and .NET 3.1. Since we've been building in .NET 6, that's definitely very convenient for us. We will be using this runtime here. But we'll need to make a little update to our App Right instance. So let me just clear this up. I like a clear screen. We can see that there is, this App Right folder here, right? Let me enter the App Right folder. And within this, there is actually an environment of variables that we'll need to edit. So let me go ahead and stop my instance for now. All right, I'm going to take this down for a second so that we can make the updates and bring it back up. Any questions in the meantime? Oh, which database is running? So currently App Right is running MariaDB under the hood. But we, App Right is, the team is working on bringing support for more adapters as well as we go forward. So, now that I've stopped my instance for now, you can find that if I just reload it once, it's going to give, you're not going to find anything here. can't be reached, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna edit the environment we have here. And here, as we can look at this environment, we can see that we've got these different runtimes here, and only these four have been enabled, right? So let me go ahead and add .NET here. Just to add runtimes, anyone that are available, you just need to find the app functions runtimes variable and add whatever runtime you want there. Okay. So if I go ahead, I've added my .NET 6 runtime, and I go ahead and I save this. Let me bring back our instance as well. I just realized I should have gone up -d. I think it might just. I really hope it doesn't end up rebuilding the entire thing. But looks like we've got the App Right, the .NET 6 runtime coming up as well. So let me go ahead, reload this. And now when I add, I can see .NET 6 available there. So I can create functions directly here as well. But in order to actually get a function in there, what will have to happen is after this, I'll need to create a tarball and then put that up. And there, of course, each functions environment has its own syntax, right? Which isn't, and this might just not be the most convenient option. Okay, I'm not sure why I ended up stopping there. Oh gosh. Okay, I'm gonna bring this back up. I think I ended up pausing that entire setup. Just give me a second once again to bring this back up. One second. Yeah, we'll just quickly get it up and running. As soon as we're through with this, I will show you how you can create a function from the CLI, which is actually probably the recommended way to go about creating functions anyway for App Right, because we've got starters that this will provide you, and you can work with those. So in order to do that, first thing we need to do is we want to install the App Right CLI. Now there are two ways to do that. A, you can use npm to install it, or even if you don't want to use npm, we actually have scripts for each of these platforms as well. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'll just quickly get it set up with npm, and yeah, this will globally install it for my system. But you can use any of them if you want. If you don't have npm on your system, you can go ahead, use the scripts as well if you'd like. Okay. After this, I'm gonna create a new directory here called init functions. Okay, we can just see this here. Let me enter this, and I am gonna go ahead now, and I will log into my instance. So this way I can just enter my authentication details, and it'll log into my instance. It didn't ask the endpoint because I had a previous version of the CLI on my system, but you can find if there's any such remaining information left using a command, and you can edit these endpoints as well to whatever you'd like. Okay, so this is gonna be all right, not a big problem. Let me clear this up, and after this, next thing we want to do is we want to initialize the project we have on this instance that we've got running with the CLI as well. Now, because we're logged in and we have a project existing already, I don't want to create a new one. So I'll select the one that we have here. And you can see that, we had the project and the project ID in brackets. Now that we've got our project up here, we can go ahead and create a function for us. I'm going to call this random word of the day. The ID can just be random word, and we're going to keep this as a .NET 6 function. All right. Now, if I show you this folder here, you'll be able to see we've got an appwrite.json and a functions folder inside. If I look at this appwrite.json that has been created, actually, I'll tell you what, let me just open this code. The good thing about WSL is that it creates a little network drive for you, so you can access these in VS Code on your local system pretty conveniently. So I have now got this folder here that I had open in VS Code. When I look at this folder that we have here, this file that we have here, it has our project ID, the name of the project, and the functions that have been created. You're right. Uh, we've got our random word function. The runtime is .NET 6. It'll have a path for that which is available within functions here. It'll also have any files and folders it needs to ignore, and you can actually add whatever you want here as well. And you can add a schedule if you'd like. I will add that directly off my console. That's what I plan to do. So you can do a lot with this. You can set a different timeout, a lot of different options here. So I'm just gonna go over, show you this function. You might see some familiarity, right? We've got our .NET 6 available here as well. Within the source, we've got an index folder, and here what we've got is we've got a very dedicated specific structure. All right. So with this function, we take in a variable called a request and a response variable. And these are very specific types. Now request contains a dictionary for our headers, a dictionary for our environment, and a string for our payload, whatever we send in. Response contains two functions that let you send back a string response or a JSON response through an object. So if you see the red lines here, don't worry too much. It's basically because this is just what .NET not being able to find some specific directives, but it's all right. Like we can add this one for now, but with runtime requests and all, it's not going to be found. That's not going to create an issue because the runtime is going to handle that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead now. Remove this. And I will hover back to this piece of code, the other one that we wrote, right? And I will just copy this. I'm going to take this over. I'm going to copy this here. Next thing I'm going to do is we had these two packages we created, right? We used these two packages earlier. Okay. Next thing, we don't need this here. I can just directly pass the message object as my object here. So that's all right. But we do want to make sure that we install the packages we created. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that. For that purpose, what I will do here is I will just go ahead .NET add package Twilio. Interesting. Oh, okay. That had some trouble with the build, but that's okay. Doesn't really matter. Yeah, I just chose not to add build and debug assets, but that's not gonna affect us because what we basically need just is this item group here. We can directly copy paste this and it will manage the rest for us. And yeah, we do need to add those using references. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do that. I also need to make a couple of slight changes that I had. Mainly being, of course, we need to copy over the models that we have. Let me go to index. I'm gonna, within this source, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create models. And I'm gonna have my dictionary there because I want to make sure I have this file here, right? So paste this here. Now I'm not gonna take the helper over like last time. I'm gonna instead use the environment we have. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make some slight changes here that are gonna take into account how the environment for App Right works. It's basically a dictionary. The environment variables we have that we set for this, which we'll set in the console by the way, we can essentially add them as we can use them as a dictionary here. So I'm gonna make these slight changes that we have. Okay. For now, I'll just actually I can change this phone number as well if I like, but we'll let it be. It's okay. Doesn't matter. So as soon as this is done, this code should be ready to deploy to App Right functions. Don't worry too much about these references. I just didn't add any build assets for C Sharp and these classes we have. The runtime discovers on its own. So it's okay. It's not gonna hurt us to have these. All right. I'm just gonna quickly save this. Save this file. And models. Save that. And now I will go back to our command line, and I will add the app right deploy function command. What this will do is it will let me select this function and deploy it to my app right instance. So if I go to app right now and I just reload this, I can see there is a function available here for us, and it is building that. Now I do need to make a few changes here, and that will basically mean I need to add my environment variables. Okay. It seems like the build failed. Let me see why it failed though. Oh, okay. I basically need a dictionary there. No worries. I'm gonna make a quick little change here. Yeah, so the reason this issue came up is basically because AppWrite it needs like the JSON function for returning the response. It needs a dictionary in there. Like we can see this error here. The warnings are okay. I mean, we can set them as nullables. I didn't do that earlier, but that shouldn't affect us too much. But anyway, it basically wasn't able to convert the message into a dictionary, so that's why we had this little trouble. But that's a quick fix. If I'm honest, I can just call this as Twilio response, and I can also add a few different other fields that we have as well. Let me quickly do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a random word, and another thing I'll add is meaning. So then, as soon as that's done, let me go ahead and let me deploy it again. So as soon as I did that, you can see there's another build being created. I can delete this older one if I like. And now it's ready to run. The only thing I need to do is I need to add my environment variable. So I'm going to take my screen off for a second there because I don't want to give away all of these details. Um, but okay, basically, when I go to settings here, I can set both a schedule, which includes cron syntax, and I can add environment variables here. Okay, I'm going to add a schedule as well, right? I'll keep this as 28 for now because I want this to be a repeating feature every day, right? For now, I'll just set it for every hour. But with this cron syntax, like just so that we can get the thing there. But you can set this at whatever you like, right? You can use the website crontab.guru for that, and this will basically post it at 4 5. Like you can find the syntax here. So I've basically followed the same thing. Since it's 1 o'clock, I'll keep it as 13. I'll, Let me go ahead and add my variables in the meantime. Just quickly, I'll do that. Any questions so far, by the way? All right, so I have updated my function with the cron schedule and these variables. Now, if all works, the function should execute at that timing. We can also manually execute it, whether through any SDK or through the console itself. But hopefully, if all goes well, in a minute, this should execute for us. I'm just going to wait for a second in the meantime. Oh, looks like, not sure why that happened. It might be a thing with the cron timing, to be honest, that can always happen. Either way, we can trigger it here right now as well. So if suppose I trigger it, it'll process it and let me know whether I got an error or whether it ran successfully. Looks like there were no errors, it ran successfully. We got a random word, we got our meaning, and I have a notification. So let me bring up my screen. Let me show my phone here. If you look at the last message that I have, it's a random word. I'm just not able to get it to zoom for a second, but it's a random word that's perambulating. It means to walk about, roam, or stroll. So our function works, which is pretty cool, right? Yep, functions are good to go. So I think as far as what I wanted to show how you can use multiple APIs together, I've definitely been able to cover that right now. All right. And I think That way, if any of you have any questions, you can let me know at the moment, or if you know if there's anything else, please feel free to ask. Oh yes, by the way, we do need to make sure that we're actually pushing this code as well, right? Because I do want to share how you can create your submission here. So let me go ahead and do that as well. I'll just copy over this uh, folder that I created for this function, and I'll just show you how to do that. In the meantime, once again, any questions? Nothing yet? All right, then in that case, if you can just give me a second, I'll go ahead and I will just bring over this function that we have. Just bring it onto and copy it into the paste it on my desktop so that we can quickly get maybe we're just able to push this over. So I've got my folder here, right? Um, Let me just quickly open this in VS Code once again. So, this is essentially the function we created earlier. Okay. We've got our function there. We've got the model we had. Now let's push it to GitHub. So for that, I'm going to just quickly go ahead and sign into GitHub. We can open VS Code. And here I'm going to write, here I'll just write DHW in it, and I'll add App Right as a tag later. I'm going to publish to a public repository, and I will just remove these functions I don't want here. Okay. The fun thing is this is just going to quickly create a Git repo for us, and I can go ahead make some updates to the README as well if I'd like. Like just for example, we saw that response we got, right? I can quickly copy this over. You know, if I just go to a JSON linter just to make it look nicer, we can validate this JSON as well. I can save this as my example output. I'll change this number. This way I can just like add this response here for now. Quickly keep this. We do need a few function, a few environment variables for sure. So let me just go ahead, get those back once again, right? Just a second. This will be quick. I think I already have these saved somewhere else. I do have some documentation on this. Oh yeah, so this should be easy for me, just quick for me to set up because I have just like a variation of these already noted for me somewhere else. So I'll just copy paste this. Give me a second. That's it. screen back up. So yeah, this README is pretty much ready as well. Just change the documentation. Sends an SMS person with a random word and its. And before I forget this, let me just add an environment variable suggestion for this as well. I will add this to the README here. The fun thing is I can actually copy paste this entire thing for our for the dev post description as well. So I'll just copy paste this in the meantime. I'll also push this over to. Missing changes here. So I can actually find this entire function here if I'd like. I can see all the details here. The description. So pretty handy there this way. Now, of course, we want to make sure that we're submitting all of this on dev post as well to get that point for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and quickly open that. If you go to the INIT registration page, you can find the dev post link here. Let me also copy this and send this over to everyone. Oh yeah, I mean, you could do anything else. This is just an example, right? You don't have to stay restricted to this for your submission either. No worries. So what we basically did throughout this session was we created a .NET function that basically gets a random word from a random word API, sends that into a free dictionary API to get back its meaning, and then SMSs that to a person of your choice using Twilio. And once we build this function, we then put it up on App Right to leverage its cloud functions. So yes, back to our dev post. So in order to register, you can see that we've already got this opt-in here. We've got the opt-in challenge. So I'll go ahead, join this hackathon. I'm working solo on this and I found out from MLH via their website. I don't know about this since I'm a coach, but make sure you share your actual reason. We'll select the eligibility requirements and go forward. Random word of the day. Right. And I will add GHW in it 2023. And like a quick gist of this is just that, send an SMS to a person with a random word and its meaning. So here, okay, so basically for this, we majorly just need what it does and how we built it. Nothing more. Because it's in it, it's all right. I'm just gonna have the same line here for now. And we built it using .NET 6, Twilio, and App Right. Just here as well, I'll just add the relevant tags. Twilio, we've got Twilio SMS, and I'll have App Right. Okay. For the tryout links, make sure that you put the GitHub repo here for sure. The video demo is not mandatory, but just because why not? I'll add the YouTube stream link. I'm adding the stream link because I've literally built it here, but it's not a mandate. It should be all right. Make sure, however, that you select the right challenge here. We are connecting two APIs together, so make sure you select this one and save and continue. Select the terms and conditions, and you can then submit your project. So yeah, bottom line, we've got our submission in. All right. So that's about it for me. Yeah, sure. I'll just send in the link here. You can check it out. Yeah, you can have a look at it. Just don't copy it. Try to make something on your own. Um, Try to do something fresh. Make a new change to it or something of that sort. Right. That's gonna help you learn a lot better as well. But yeah, I guess I've covered all I wanted to cover. Thank you so much to everyone for joining in. This was my last stream this INIT. I've definitely had a good time chatting with all of you here, and I look forward to seeing you all in future hackathons, future global hack weeks, and I'd love to meet you folks if whenever possible. So thank you so much once again, and see you all. Bye bye.